my background is in open source. I've created some libraries like style components that many millions of engineers have used that really redefines how people style React applications back in the day. And as part of this, I spent a lot of time thinking about what makes for a good developer experience. What does it mean for something to be intuitive, to work the way that people expect it to work? And we were talking on the panel about how that is still relevant in the agents world or not,
Hmm.
and how that taste that we've developed over the years applies or not. And I think fundamentally, taste has become actually core to what I do with agents now, because often I find that I have to steer agents either in the planning phase or in the implementation phase to work to solve problems at the right layer.
Yeah.
It's often not possible to solve problems that you're trying to solve at many different layers in the stack. You can make it front end fix it, back end fix it, database fix it, whatever fix. But it's not always the agents aren't always choosing the right layer to choose a problem at, depending on what trade-offs and ramifications it will have in the long term. And so I think that's where currently a lot of the taste still comes in choosing where do we solve this problem? What does that mean for the future? What does it mean for the maintainability of the system? What does that mean for future ramifications and features that we might want to build? And then choosing the right set of trade-offs that you're trying to make. And so I think this is still relevant, but developer experience has become a lot less relevant because, well,
Mm.
we're no longer typing code. And so in many ways, libraries are a lot less relevant. Agents can just create them from scratch and it's fine. Like that whole era has sort of passed and will, I think, continue to pass as models get better. But for now, I think a lot of the engineering ends up being the taste of how do we actually solve this problem correctly.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I feel like personally, to me, the experience still matters a lot. I really like the experience, of the IDE, but now moving more into the CLI as well. I feel like I'm constantly shifting my taste into the experience that I liked. A year ago, I was not that much into the CLI as I am today, and today I'm spending my weekends building CLI experiences. So I feel like it's just shifting. But maybe what do you think about that?
Well, I think if you look at where the early adopters are now, if you think if you think back maybe a year ago, Peter Steinberger just started coding again, and he ended up in this world where he was running 10 coding agents at the same time, and everybody thought he was completely insane. Like, who the fuck does that?
Yeah.
And then December rolled around, and everybody started testing it and went, oh shit, no, actually, this is clearly the future, and everybody started running 10 coding agents. And if you look at where the early adopters are now when they're working on their own projects, I think a lot of them are no longer looking at code. They're no longer really reviewing the implementation. They're using agents to write the code, and they're using agents like CodeRabbit to review the code, but they're no longer actually reviewing the implementation themselves. They're trusting the reviewers to give the implementers good feedback. And so clearly today, I don't think that works in production system. Like I work on
Hmm.
ChatGPT and Codex, and like these are massive code bases in a massive monorepo. Agents get things wrong
Yeah.
for now. But in toy projects, this works. And so as models get better, I think in 6 months, we're going to look back and it's going to start feeling ridiculous to look at implementation at that point. We're really only going to be operating at a level of actually, does this thing work? And is it solved at the right layer anymore?
Do you feel like the visualization of code has to change with that as well?
Probably. I mean, I think part of what's fun right now is everything's in flux. I keep telling people back home that are normies that are not into tech, and they,
Yeah.
because I work at OpenAI, everybody asks me about AI and yada yada yada.
You're the
Like
AI guy.
what's happening exactly? Like I'm the AI guy for my friends,
Yeah.
and they ask me, what's happening with AI? Are we all gonna have jobs? And I keep telling them like my job was the first one that completely changed. Software engineering compared to 6 months ago, compared to 2 years ago, is completely different. Like completely different. It's a completely different job in many ways.
Yeah.
And so, like, what's gonna happen in the next year, in the next 2 years? I have no idea, but it's for sure gonna look different than it does today.
I feel like if you're a relatively adaptive human being, not necessarily younger or older, I think the same applies to some of the older folks that I've been talking to. As long as you're curious, I feel like your job has become more exciting than it was
Oh,
before.
for sure. I think Jeff gave a great talk here about the curiosity. And really, I think that's really what it boils down to. Are you curious to explore this new world? And I think people who resist the look, change, generally speaking, is scary to lots of people. And I think
Yeah.
that's just generally human nature. We like things to stay the same, most people anyway. But truthfully, change will happen. You cannot prevent it.
Mhm.
If things are going really well, they're going to get worse. If things are going really badly, they're going to get better. It's always going to change. And so the best thing you can do is just roll with the punches and embrace the change and thrive on it versus trying to fight it because it is happening. But you're totally right. The people who resist the change, they're going to be left behind if they aren't already.
Interestingly enough, I mean, you and me, we come from very similar backgrounds in the sense that you're Austrian, I'm German. What would you say to, all folks at home who are naturally speaking a little bit more resistant to change? I think our cultures come from a background that is more motoric, things have certainly worked in a certain systematic way for a time. Do you have a piece of advice?
I don't know that I have a good answer for that, to be honest. I try to surround myself by people who are curious, who try to make things happen. And I spent a lot of time when I was living in Europe finding a small group of friends who felt that way too.
Uh-huh.
And I never really, part of why I moved to the US was because I felt this way and I wanted to be around more people who are curious and who want to make things happen. And so I don't know that I really have good advice for people who aren't that way because I'm not that way. And so I don't know what to tell them.
Yeah.
Like you kind of end up, maybe for this lifetime, they still have a choice to resist the change, but the next generation surely won't. And so they're gonna have to figure it out. But I don't know that I have a really good answer for it.
I'm a bit more hopeful, to be honest. I've been going home quite a bit. As part of my developer advocacy role, I had the pleasure of organizing events as well in Europe, and I see a lot of very aspiring folks back home who are
I
really getting
agree.
their hands dirty. Yeah.
I totally agree. I'm talking about the people who are already in their ways and who don't want to change.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what to tell those people other than you kind of don't have a choice. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
if you're resistant to change, you're not gonna get anywhere soon.
But OpenAI has offices in Europe too, right? We have, I mean, a big one in Munich, I know of, at least, where I know some folks that are working there. As an internal, how do you see the rate of adoption in Europe for AI technology, maybe in Germany or Austria?
I mean, OpenAI, we make AI, and so internally, everybody's Codex build, everybody's using
Yeah.
Codex every day across all of the departments. Basically, we're creating connectors for every single system that we use so that we can interact with it agentically. But I don't think we're a typical
Mhm.
company in that sense, right? Like we don't really represent Europe. Even the people who work at OpenAI in Europe have to be inherently more forward looking because they're working with AI, they're working on AI, right? Like they're not the typical European laggard who resists change in that way.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Then let's talk more about the product. What's the most exciting thing you're working on right now?
So I work on ChatGPT and Codex across both of them on connectors, meaning how do both of these interact with the outside world. And so in Codex, we recently introduced plugins, which now contain skills.
Yeah.
And we're starting to roll out more and more plugins. We just went from 20 to like 120. One really important thing for us always is safety.
Yeah.
And so we spend a lot of time making sure that everything we give to users and we recommend to users ends up having a strong safety angle. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's been a really big focus. And we're going to continue to make both Codex and ChatGPT better at interacting with outside things. Really, the goal for us is to build the super system. And so to get there, we have our models have to interact with the outside world. And so
Yeah.
that's really been
I just
both
built a
focus.
plugin last weekend actually. Started with Claude. I gotta build one for Codex now too, especially after this conversation. What is your number one tip to build a really good plugin that maybe also makes its way into your plugin store?
It's honestly the same as building anything. It's lots of iterations and making sure it works really well.
Mhm.
Actually at this conference, there's one plugin that we shipped recently called, I think, Superpower that like 5 people at this conference told me about.
I just interviewed the creator into my podcast
That's
last
fun.
weekend. Yeah, it's amazing. I love it.
I haven't tried it yet, but I heard really good things, so now I'm gonna try it when I get home.
I think that's actually what I was referring to when I was talking about CLI DevX experiences. The DevX experience of that tool is amazing. It really comes with a set of skills. One of them is brainstorming. So it basically guides you through a brainstorm session with Codex or with Claude. And it really challenges you in your ideation phase before you even start writing a first line of prompt, I guess you should say, instead of code. And through a series of questions and really, really challenges your thinking on an architectural level. And then it gets into an implementation phase that has its own code review cycle and everything else. And that's the reason why I asked you about code visualization before. I built a code visualizer to visualize the OpenClaw code base as a city of streams and pipelines and interconnections. And the diff comes in as different buildings. And I one-shotted it basically with superpowers that came out really well.
That's awesome. I'm gonna have to try it. So many people here told me about it. Now I feel like I gotta try it.
It has 60,000 stars, I think, now on GitHub,
huge.
and it just rose over, I think, the last couple months. So it's
That's
kind of a
amazing.
little bit of an open claw effect almost on that.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm gonna try it.
Yeah, I'll send you the podcast as well.
This is great.
Well, Max, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
Great
It's fun.
insights, yeah, and hopefully see you at the next AIE.
Yes.
Awesome.